to the Token and Hobbs Show on the Roads to Liberty Network.
Welcome, everyone. Good night. This is the Roads to Liberty podcast. I'm your host, Token, with my fearless partner in crime, Hobbs over there. How you doing, Hobbs?
Good.
Awesome. And first of all, sorry for the technical difficulties. We took a little while for us to get everything working, but we got it working now, and we are talking today with the founder of the Libertarian Party Mises Caucus, Mr. Michael Heise. How you doing, Michael?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Sorry that that my computer hates Chrome. I don't know what the problem is there, but we got it going now with the phone, so that's good.
Absolutely. And this is going to be part 2 of our Better Know a Caucus series. We talked last night with the representative of the Republican Liberty Caucus, and now we're talking to our first Libertarian Party caucus. So, Michael, you're the founder of the Mises Caucus. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the caucus's history?
So, if anybody can go to hashtag Mises Caucus and see like the very beginning of the me like conceptualizing it, you know, and it's something that I had been thinking about in the wake of the Gary Johnson campaign in 2016, because I was very highly active in the grassroots for Ron Paul in 2012. And, you know, I never joined the GOP or anything like that. I was never engaged in party politics. I just loved Ron Paul and was part of this underground world of activists called Truth, Freedom, Prosperity. And so that was the Ron Paul experience was one thing. You know, it was highly positive. It was highly unifying. It certainly appeared as if we were scaring the hell out of the establishment. You know, Ron Paul was going out there and rocking these fools, you know, and they were obviously afraid of how smart he was, and it was getting everybody all gassed up and dropping out of school to work the campaign, or moving or people like me who have never been engaged before walking down the streets of Philly with a bullhorn talking about the Federal Reserve. And you know, so that was just so inspiring. And then so come 2016, you know, I had stayed active as an activist in the after the Ron Paul thing, after they screwed him at the national convention. I went apolitical anarchist. So I started, you know, I did my own podcast. I did some writing. I wrote for Cop Block. I wrote for Filming Cops. Had some articles for the Free Thought Project. Started doing man in the street interviews and stuff like that. And then once 2016 rolled around, Rand Paul was running, and yeah, Rand is not Ron, but you know, I was hoping that lightning would strike twice, and it did not. That did not happen. And so Rand kind of fizzled out beyond what I expected. So that's when I kind of started to open myself up more to, you know, maybe joining the Libertarian Party. And so I did, and I got in a little bit before Johnson was the actual nominee, but I kind of always assumed that he would be the nominee. And so, you know, I volunteered, and the difference in the experience between the Ron Paul campaigns and the Gary Johnson campaigns was just night and day. I mean, the Pennsylvania state coordinator was an 18-year-old kid who couldn't get me my signs, but was monitoring my Facebook posts in case I wasn't, you know, so in case I was a little too critical, if he happened to say something about forced vaccinations or something, you know, and eventually I got pulled in by the county Libertarian Party, and they did a better job campaigning than the Gary Johnson campaign did, and met a lot of good people in the Lancaster County, Pennsylvania Libertarian Party. So just the night and day experience of like how motivating and inspiring the Ron Paul was, and how like nasty and unmotivating the Gary Johnson campaign was. It just got me thinking of like, man, like we really need to bring that energy back. We really need to bring that positive feedback loop back. How could we do that? Or yeah, how can we do that? So that's when I started trying to conceptualize in the Mises Caucus of like reigniting the Ron Paul revolution within the context of the Libertarian Party, because my thesis is that Ron initiated a positive feedback loop by the things I already described, the debates, all that kind of stuff. And that died with him when they killed his campaign. However, if we were ever to be able to recreate that in the confines of an organization, that's a lot more difficult to like kill. So theoretically, the feedback loop never has to stop. It's just getting it started is very, very difficult when you got, you know, a food fight going on amongst factions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Ron Paul was the guy that got me into libertarianism. Like I could call myself libertarian-ish before him, but when he came onto the scene, that's when I went full-blown libertarian, and it was really exciting at the time. You know, I wasn't able to fully take part in it because I think in his second run for president, I was in the military stationed overseas, so I wasn't really able to be a part of that. But when I got out of the military, came back to the States, joined the Libertarian Party, it was really exciting to be able to, you know, reminisce about that with a lot of old guys that had been with the Ron Paul movement. But as far as the Mises Caucus goes, I remember when you guys first started up, there was a lot of backlash to it in the established Libertarian Party. Why don't you tell me a little bit about that?
Well, we came out swinging. We came out swinging real hard against essentially the LP establishment, and particularly the Nick Sarwark, the chair of the Libertarian Party, because now some people think, and I can totally understand the optics of this. So it's like, oh, well, they only started because of the you know, because Sarwark called Tom Woods a Nazi, and they're just a response to that. And I can certainly understand how it looks that way, and that's why I was saying, like, you could go ahead and check out the hashtag to see for yourself that it predated that. But it was basically fate, I guess, like, because I finally decided, okay, I was trying to, because I had done the podcast thing, I'd done the writing thing, I'd done the street interview thing, and I just didn't feel fulfilled. So I was trying to say, all right, I got to pick a project and stick with it long term. And I was entertaining something in the LP, and so I finally said, all right, you know what? I'm just going to make this group, and we'll see what happens. Well, it turns out, right as I made the Facebook group, Sarwark was on Twitter calling Tom Woods a Nazi, and I didn't even know because I don't use Twitter. Facebook is enough of a time sink as it is. And so because of that, it timed up perfectly, and we kind of absorbed the entire fallout. So it was like this hostile thing of libertarians who were coming at that. Nobody knew who they were. They weren't, you know, visibly active with the party too much prior to that, coming out swinging, saying, "Oh, the chair sucks. We're going to take them out, and we're gonna you know overrun the party." And we almost did. So I'm trying to get my phone to stay straight here. But yeah, so we came out swinging, and that was definitely met with some backlash. But I don't regret anything at all, because I wouldn't play it quite that hostile now. But at the same time, the metaphor that I like to use, or the analogy I like to use, is you know, in basketball, if a shot goes up, clanks up off the rim, goes up in the air, you're going to have two people who are, you know, in position to get the ball. They're going to be jockeying for position and trying to box each other out and wrestle to get the inner space to go up and get the rebound. And that's kind of how I see what we were doing. We were creating our groove within the party. But once you pull the ball down, it's time to move it up the court and make a play. So I think that's kind of like what we're doing now that we've launched the Mises Pack and everything, is we're making our play. We're done the wrestling and got the ball now.
Yeah, absolutely. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the mission of the Mises Caucus? Why does this caucus need to exist?
Well, I would say several reasons. I mean, so one of them is that right now the Libertarian Party is kind of I would say that the Libertarian Party is characterized almost as like the branding, at least, is almost characterized as like a left libertarian party. Now, the outside observer might not understand the difference, but we do, and I would say that is within the greater libertarian movement, the minority position, and yet it's what dominates the LP. And so you look at it, and then there's, you know, there was millions of people in Ron Paul 2008. There was millions more people in Ron Paul 2012. You know, there's Tom Woods has. I mean, I'm using outdated numbers here, but as of like last year, 60,000 listeners per show. You know, and yet somehow there's only like 16 or 17,000 members of the Libertarian Party. So we're not doing a very good job of retaining our own people. And then even the crown jewel of the whole pragmatic thing, Gary Johnson running in 2016. Yeah, he got 4.3 million votes, and that does count for something. But even if you were to start at zero, right? Like, let's say there was 0 members of the LP prior to Gary Johnson 2016, and then we jumped up from that to 16 or 17,000. That's still less than 1% of 4.3 million. So, like, what got added to the party after that? I'm sorry about the phone dropping. It's because of the.
No, you're fine.
You're fine.
But yeah. So it's like what is being added. So I would say multiple things. One, our mission is multifaceted. Our mission is to give a voice for the Ron Paul revolution and that entire sphere of libertarianism. And by sphere, I would say is the most popular and the most passionate elements of the libertarian movement: the Ron Paul revolution, the Mises Institute fans, Tom Woods listeners, Dave Smith listeners, fans of the 10th Amendment Center, and this whole big coalition. Because the thing with the Ron Paul campaign is it wasn't just the Ron Paul campaign. The internet was different back then. Like it wasn't as ingrained as it is now. There was the whole idea of running a campaign through social media, like, is becoming more and more normal now. It wasn't like that. This was like the precursor to all of that. So there was all these things that came up out of the soil of the Ron Paul campaign. There was, the Free Thought Project popped up. Adam Kokesh was doing Adam versus the Man, getting 1 million hits a month at the time. Ben Swan popped up. The anti-media popped up. All these things popped up. And so that needs to be preserved, because otherwise we're going to lose ourselves. We're going to lose our movement to cynicism and infighting. Because there's not forward progress being made that we can all feel good and unite around, or not much. And so I would say that element is part of our mission. But the other part of it that we really are trying to address with Mises PAC is the fact that there's no infrastructure in the party. So if you talk to members of the Libertarian Party, they'll all tell you, not in these words, but they'll all tell you that they want the Hans Hermann Hoppe strategy. They all want a bottom-up strategy. They all want us to focus on local where we have the most effect. And we haven't had much cohesion around that. Well, now that we've launched Mises PAC, the mission is that it is to support local and county level candidates with on one hand, and on the other hand, it's to engage in issue lobbying or ballot initiatives in the states that allow them.
Cool. Okay. So, why do you think that libertarians, both the big L, Libertarian Party members or former Libertarian Party members, and the little L Libertarian, in principle, why do you think that they should support the Mises Caucus? And also, why do you think that the current Libertarian Party, as it stands right now, would be a better home for the small L libertarian-minded people than the GOP?
Well, my answer to that's kind of twofold, because it really, I would say the answer to that last question, it depends on what your primary focus is, and if you're looking at the short term or the long term. If you're in the short term and you're saying, look, I want to be engaged in federal level politics, the debt's too crazy, blah, 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 then there's not much that we can do through the LP. We just don't have the political capital. So from that strategic ground, then I would say that we are not the no-brainer options for libertarians. When you look at it that way, and then you also look at Young Americans for Liberty and the fact that they just got 38 people elected to state house, Liberty Republicans, on their first tryout, and we just lost all of our state house. And it's not like Young Americans for Liberty didn't try to help any LP candidates. They helped at least 3 LP candidates, and they helped at least 1 libertarian that was running as an independent, and they just didn't win. So in that regard, I would still argue that the Libertarian Party is the best option in the long term, because in the short term, okay, they're more viable in those ways. But at the end of the day, it's a party that is diametrically opposed to our principles. And as long as the GOP is the most viable option for libertarians, we will always be juggling counter prerogatives. You know what I mean? So, like, we want to get elected, right? So we have to maintain that. So that means there's going to be an element of kissing the ring. There's going to be an element of doing what you got to do to stay in the ring. And that's going to be counterbalanced by your adherence to principle, you know, and some people play it like where they're not going to bend at all. They're not going to give any concessions. And this is like Ron Paul or I would say Justin Amash. They're not down to play the game. But then some people might bend at the knee a little bit to try to make forward progress. And I would say that's more along what Rand Paul and Thomas Massey does. And both tactics, I think, have their place and have their value. But long term, I think we're going to have to build our own thing. So that's why I think people should join the Libertarian Party. Why they should join the caucus is because, you know, there really is more than one strain of libertarianism. There's what I would call the liberal strain. You know, that's what came through Adam Smith and through the founding fathers and what our rich tradition is. But then there's the what I would call the logically deductive strain or the Rothbardian strain. And they have somewhat different first principles and they manifest in different ways. Well, right now, I would say the liberal strain is what is dominating the LP brand. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think it doesn't distinguish itself from the other two parties as much because it still basically presumes that the government is a necessity, whereas the other strain is, which is where Ron Paul came from, and therefore the success and all that was drawn to is the Rothbardian angle, and I think that is much more inspiring if we embrace it.
Okay, so do you see perhaps the Mises Caucus as being maybe some kind of a vehicle towards those people who may be in the GOP or more Republican, you know, not necessarily in the GOP, but Republican leaning? Do you think you see the Mises Caucus as maybe a vehicle to get those people to actually become active members of the Libertarian Party down the road?
Yeah, I do, because when you talk to those people, their number one thing is what has the LP done, and
right.
And now that's not, and I don't mean to like, you know, I'm obviously engaged with the LP and I care and I want it to grow and everything, and obviously we have made gains, but when you're talking about, well, we've gained ballot access to this amount, it's like, well, we have four national level people in Amash, Massey, Rand, and Mike Lee. Yeah. So so this is a sport, like another like kind of sports analogy, but I would say winning solves everything. And by winning, I don't necessarily just mean electoral wins, but moral wins as well. And if we can change our branding to be more attractive to I would say the biggest chunk of the libertarian pie, then yeah, I would say they're already coming. I mean, and not only the GOPers, but the apolitical anarchist types too. You know, we've gotten a lot of that. I mean, look at Tom Woods joined the party, and he's an ANCAP. Dave Smith, I don't know if he still considers himself an ANCAP. I think he's a Christian conservative. But you get my point. And we've already seen it happen. So all we've got to do is going back to the Ron Paul thing, is figure out how to initiate that feedback loop. And once we start winning, I think everything else will fall into place, and you'll start to see some of the infighting and the bullshit fall by the wayside. And what will be left is, instead of infighting, it'll be healthy competition. You know, I don't want to be fighting with the prags. I don't want to be I do want to have healthy competition, but I think that we have to elevate the game of the Libertarian Party itself to get to that point.
Okay,
well,
cool.
Speaking of which, what kind of successes so far can the Mises Caucus claim?
Well, I would say we've made history with the fact that we launched Mises PAC. Now there's other PACs there's other.
I think we lost him.
I think we did as well. Well, we're gonna try to get our guest back on the line because I was really interested to see what he had to say.
Yeah, I had a question about some things that I was
wait,
hoping to ask.
He's back. He's back. Gotta let him back in.
Good.
Here we are.
It's because my phone is sitting on my headphone jack. So,
welcome back.
But I would say we've already made history with Mises PAC, literally, because yes, there's PACs that have been active in the party, but those were like candidate PACs. Those were like Gary Johnson PACs. There hasn't been anything, to my knowledge, that has said we are here for the long haul to build the party from the ground up. Nothing like that, to my knowledge, exists. And even if it did, it certainly wasn't a hybrid PAC. And we are, to my knowledge, the first hybrid PAC to get involved and aim at the bottom up of the party. So what a hybrid PAC is it means that we're one committee, two bank accounts. One bank account being a traditional PAC, one bank account being a super PAC. Now, so the plan is we're already raising over almost $1,100 a month, which means we're out fundraising several state parties, and it only took us like a month and a half to do that, and we didn't do any boosting of posts. We didn't do any fun paid advertising or anything like that. It was just organic effort. So I think the audience there is there and the desire is there, but yeah, there's never been anything like this. So the idea is that we're going to use the traditional PAC to give direct financial support to local and county level candidates around the country. And then we're going to use the super PAC to kind of what we want to do is basically emulate what Young Americans for Liberty does with Operation Win at the Door, which is their program where they will essentially pick a candidate and then they'll hire a team of students and give them a wage and pay for their living to go out for a month or 3 weeks or whatever it might be and say, here's your walk list, knock on these 30,000 doors 3 times. And that's how they've gotten their 38 victories out of like the 75 or whatever total that they supported. So that's one thing. We've gotten the endorsement of Ron Paul. That's something I'm extremely proud of. We've gotten some of the biggest podcasters in the libertarian movement to join the party, like Tom Woods, like Pete Raymond, like Jason Stapleton even. And I would say politically our biggest accomplishment that, again, I'm really proud of is we got involved with the psilocybin initiative in Denver, Colorado, well before it was ever on the ballot. And so when I reached out to Kevin, the executive director, he told me that no libertarian had reached out to him before. And so I got him, we got him on some podcasts. We got him on Tom Woods. We got him on several others. And then we got him in front of the Libertarian Party of Colorado. They passed a resolution in support. He was able to recruit some libertarian volunteers. We helped get it on the ballot. And that thing only passed by less than 2,000 votes. So, and not only that, but there's little ripple effects that come out of that too. So like, for example, in my last phone call with Kevin, he identified himself as a libertarian now. And then not only that, but after that passed, a couple weeks later, Oakland, California passed a measure to not just decriminalize mushrooms, but decriminalize all natural psychedelics. So that's psilocybin mushrooms. That's not MDMA. That's ibogaine. That's DMT. That's ayahuasca. That's peyote. All things that are being shown to have mental health benefits. And that was despite our reputation, that was a very left-wing group of people. You know what I mean? Like, and so we're building these bridges. We're partnered with the 10th Amendment Center on these types of efforts. I would say we've achieved a lot for the fact that we got no budget up until recently.
Yeah, that's all some pretty impressive stuff to hear.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about the Mises Caucus's relationship with other LP caucuses. There's quite a few of them, and you've already mentioned the Prags. You didn't I know there's a lot of common ground with the radicals, or at least that's the impression I've gotten. But yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
So I mean, I would only say that there's a few caucuses that are what I would call serious, and that are doing serious or attempting to do serious work. There's other ones that I would amount more to interest group clubs, almost like, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you got the secular caucus, you got the unity caucus, but the big ones I would say are us, the radical caucus, the pragmatic caucus, and then you got the socialist and the audacious caucus, which I kind of see interchangeably anyway. So, I mean, with the Prags, I would say it's somewhat mixed. I mean, we have a lot of Prags that don't like us because we took a very strong position against Bill Weld, and that was their golden boy, and he's gone now. And I'm not saying that that's our fault, that we're a direct cause of that, but I do think that we indirectly contributed to it in that we started growing rapidly. We started getting a lot of members, and most of them were very anti-Weld. So, like, I would say we contributed to a general trend in the environment of the LP that was very anti-Weld, and I think he saw that and said, and do I think he walked away from the LP shaking his fist like, "Oh, goddamn Mises"? Like, no, I don't think that's the case. But I do think that we contributed to an environment that led him to go, and that's something that I'm really proud of. So
if people want to pin that on you, I'd wear that medal with pride.
Hell yeah, dude, I'll take that. So for example, like the chair of Philadelphia, I'm not in Philadelphia, I'm close to it, is a Prague, and we work the Maj Toure campaign together, and we get along very well, and we agree on most things. So for me, like, ideology does play a part into it, but what concerns me more than ideology, if I'm working with somebody, is, do I think you're honest and trustworthy? And there's a lot of people that I don't find to be honest and trustworthy that happen to be in other groups that I think is who we clash with the most. So yes, there's elements of the Prags that I would say are very, very toxic, and completely politically driven, and it's like the principles don't even matter. The Radical Caucus, I mean, there's some people who are on there that don't like us, but I would say overall, like, we're allies, and I would consider them our biggest allies in the LP generally. They're more focused on the purity of the platform. I think they might allow, or their community, I should say, is a little more friendly in some pockets of identity politics, whereas we take a very, very strong stance against identity politics. And we obviously also put Austrian economics as the proper model of economics that we should be pushing. But much more overlap than anything there. And then the Socialist Caucus is an oxymoron.
No, I would agree with that, and it's not really a real thing anyway. The only reason they exist is to get attention for their chair, who's not even their chair anymore. I think he joined the Socialist Party or some nonsense. Good riddance there.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, no kidding.
Rather not have that guy identify himself with the Libertarian Party. We still have a few minutes left here. One of our listeners wanted to know where the crest came from and what it means.
The logo?
Yes.
I don't know if it has a meaning if we're talking about the one that I'm thinking, like the 3 gold bars.
I think he's talking more of the shield.
Oh, the shield. Well, that's Mises' crest. So you can find that over at the Institute. That's just like his family crest from back in the day.
The Mises coat of arms.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, well, that's simple enough then. One of our commenters, Jason Hagar, asks, howdy from the Panhandle. Is there a Mises Caucus in the Panhandle? And I'm going to assume he means the Florida Panhandle.
So Florida is one of our best states. So you should reach out to Julia Elizabeth or even your chair, Steve Nicalia, and see where you can get involved. But that's another thing, is that one of our achievements. We have over 40 organizers all around the country. I just spent 3 weeks calling all of them one-on-one. Like, there's a lot going on, So we've got people working on gold and silver in Oklahoma. We got people working on weed and hemp in Mississippi. We got people working on protecting weed users' gun rights in Missouri. We got people working on sex work in New York. We got I want to see if I can divert any resources to a ballot initiative effort to legalize weed in South Dakota. And there's all kinds of stuff. I mean, I'm working to decriminalize weed here where I live in Norristown, Pennsylvania, because you got to work with what you got, and it's like the entire city council here is Democrat. 70% of the 70+% of the voting population here is Democrat. So that's how I'm going to get myself in the door, is with areas of overlap with the left, despite my reputation.
Oh, and what a reputation it is. So I guess one last question before we go. Who was your biggest? Who would you consider your biggest get for the Mises Caucus? And you mentioned several libertarian podcasters: Tom Woods, Dave Smith, Stapleton, Mance Raider, all these different folks who joined once the Mises Caucus got up to running. So if you had to pick one that was like got you the most excited, who would that be?
So easily Ron Paul, because he endorsed us. That's the one that got me the most excited. That because and you can go to our Facebook page and go to the videos tab and see the video that he sent to us with that endorsement. And that's the one that got me the most excited for sure. And it's, for me, it was like crossing a Rubicon, because I'm going on all these podcasts and I talk about the Ron Paul revolution and Ron Paul, and but the reason I'm like that is because Ron is the whole Ron thing is something a little bit different for me than I think it is for most people. I think for most people it was an intellectual awakening, a philosophical awakening, and that's true, and it was for me too. But it was something more than that for me, because Ron. So basically, at the time, I was very, very horrifically depressed when Ron entered my life, and on top of the intellectual awakening and on top of the philosophical awakening, it kind of also gave me a vision of the kind of person that I want to be like, like courageous and willing to take stands and not back down and fighting for the truth and consistent and all that kind of stuff. So, so for when I got that endorsement, for me, it was like, okay, that's it. This has to work. You know what I mean? Like this, there's no other choice now. Like I have to make this work. So
Yeah,
it kind of took on a whole, it kind of took on a whole new thing for me after that, of like how serious this is.
Yeah, I think that for a lot of people in the liberty movement, for younger people and for guys like my age, I'm in my mid-30s, Ron Paul, for a soft-spoken 80-year-old guy, he has a ton of charisma and he means so much to so many people. I know one of the proudest moments in my life was a couple of years ago when I got my picture taken with him.
Yeah.
And I've been through just a ton of stuff, and that right there was one of the happiest days of my life. I got to actually stand next to and touch Ron Paul. That was like, so yeah, like definitely, yeah, I can see where you're coming from with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's just, this is my life's trajectory now. It's not a side project anymore, or something that I'm working on, or something that I hope works out. It's like, this is the path now. You know what I mean? Like, and so it takes on a completely different context.
Yeah.
All right. So we're coming up on the half-hour mark. So if anybody wants to get in touch with the Mises Caucus, get involved, or just, get some more information, where would they go to do that? So
there's LPMCsCaucus.com. And so obviously that's the main website. We're putting out content, building our email list. We've already got like 1,200 people on the email list. And there's some pages on there that I would say are key that people should check out. So you go to the menu, and then there's the Our Actions page. That one's very, very important, because that's basically what we're asking our organizers to try to carry out, or a pool of activities. So what that is a list of action items and sample legislation to go along with them. So that's really important. Another one is the Beginner's Guide to the LP. So this is kind of a primer of, so the basics that you're going to need to know of Robert's Rules of Order and the structure of the LP from national to state to county. And here's how you can contact everybody. And this is what the committees are. And here's what a committee even is. And here's an idea of some things that you can do right when you get started. And so that's very important. And then obviously MisesPAC.com. We are accepting recurring donations for as little as $5 a month. And it adds up. I mean, our small donor base in less than 2 months time is at $1,100. So that's that's going to the traditional PAC account, which means that is candidate support money. So that's money that we are going to be using to get libertarians elected at the local and county level to fulfill our vision of a decentralized revolution.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Michael, for coming on the show, for talking to us, for laying out the case for why libertarians should be members of the Mises Caucus. Is there anything else you want to say before we call it a night?
Take human action.
Awesome. Yes, take human action. All right, everybody. Remember, the website is roads2liberty.com. That's roads2liberty.com. Our good friend Ben Backus has been doing a lot of work on that, so go check it out. You can find us on Facebook, on YouTube, on Instagram, on Twitter. We're on Minds now, and you can listen to this show just about anywhere podcasts are found. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening. You have a good night.